you speak English and you speak Dutch?
No, Danish.
Sorry.
Not Dutch. That is so American to say that.
So American. And I paused and I thought, oh, I've got it right. Of course I did.
This special bonus episode will be so much meta in so many levels. Let me start by rewinding about a year back. I was approached by someone who was in the process of starting a brand new radio station in the UK. The plan was to build their programming around great podcasts from around the world, and they said that they would like to have the Radio Vagabond on the program. I thought it sounded quite different and exciting, so I said I was in. And right from the launch of the radio station in February, the Radio Vagabond has been a part of the daily programming. The station's called Podcast Radio, and they broadcast online to the whole world and on DAB in London, Surrey, Manchester, and Glasgow. In between the various handpicked podcasts, they do news and interviews, and one of their hosts is a radio legend. Literally. His name is Gene Baxter, and he's been on the radio as Bean for many years. He's an Anglo-American, born and raised in West Yorkshire in England. When he was 15, he and his family moved to the US, where he started doing radio. For about 30 years, he was a part of the legendary morning show Kevin and Bean on an at least as legendary radio station, KROQ in Los Angeles. The show was such a huge success that in 2015, they were inducted into the National Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. And that's a huge deal. So this guy is truly a legend. In March 19, Gene announced that he would stop later that year and move, as he said, home to England with his wife. Because even though he sounds very American, he also feels very British. Now, as I mentioned, he's one of the hosts on Podcast Radio, and as you will hear, he's an amazing natural talent behind a microphone. And I was honored to speak to one of my personal heroes in this industry that I have worked in since 1985. So, welcome to Meta Monday. Here's an interview with me, an old radio dude being interviewed by another old radio dude from a radio station that broadcasts this podcast, and now the interview is here too. It does not become more meta than this. Enjoy.
Hello there, my name is Gene Baxter, sometimes known as that awfully handsome chap on the tube that you wish you had the nerve to go up and speak with, but now, alas, he's gone in the night. Perhaps better known as Podjock number 2 here on Podcast Radio. You've heard the quote, if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I'm not sure who said it originally. It's been attributed to Mark Twain, Confucius, and many others. But today I'm living proof of that because I would have happily done the following interview for free. During our first 6 months at Podcast Radio, we brought you hundreds of podcasts and thousands of episodes. But the podcast I've spent the most time enjoying is called The Radio Vagabond. Its host is a Danish entrepreneur named Palle Bo. He's an award-winning advertising man and the co-owner of multiple radio stations back home in Denmark. And he's not just living his dream, he's living a lot of our dreams. Here's how.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world. At the age of 50, he made a bold decision. He sold everything, his house, his car, his furniture, and set out with a quest to visit every single country in the world, documenting everything along the way.
4 years on the road, thousands of miles traveled, about 100 countries already under his belt. And then came the pandemic. That brought Palle's journey to a screeching halt. And when I caught up with him this week, he told me of being stuck in the same place for the first time in a long time.
I haven't left since March. I've been here since March, and I didn't expect to stay this long, but it was kind of on purpose that if I had to get stuck somewhere, I don't mind if it was here because I love it here.
Well, you have said in the past when people ask you that Cape Town is your favorite city in the world, even after all the places you've been since then. Is that still the case?
It's still the case, yeah.
Really? How come? What is it about Cape Town?
Well, the nature is just so stunning. No matter where you look, it's just so beautiful. And the people are very nice and friendly and easy to connect with and fun, have a great sense of humor, kind of like the Danish sense of humor, I think. And then it's cheap. It's half price of what we know from Western Europe and the US. So yeah, I like everything about it.
Those are very good reasons, by the way. When you put up that episode on March 15th, right at the start of the lockdown, was there in the back of your mind a thought, you saw how big this was going to get? Did you think, well, maybe time to abandon the Radio Vagabond? Maybe it's over. Maybe the journey ends here because I just can't safely continue to go around the world with this virus still a thing?
No, it's never been on my mind to stop. I just want to be able to start moving more again, even though I love it here. But I just had my anniversary of 2 days ago where it's been full-time traveling for 4 years. And when I started traveling, I thought that it was going to be 4 years, but now another 10 years is my guess.
I think it's funny. At some point, you're going to get to retirement age. And then what will you do in retirement? Because the rest of us look forward to that day so we can go traveling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, because I say that to everybody who asks me is, how long are you going to travel? Well, 10, 15 years. And then, oh my God, in 10, 15 years, I'm the normal retirement age. So yeah, I really don't know. I don't think I'll ever stop. Once I do settle down again is when one of my daughters will start producing grandchildren for me. Mm-hmm. And that's when I want to be close to them and a part of that. But whenever some of my friends, they have grandchildren. I'm 55 years old now, so it's happening in my network of people in my age. And I always say, oh, I'm so jealous. And whenever I say that to my daughters, they say, oh, just relax. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
But even when you go back to Denmark and you become a dear old grandpa, you're never going to be able to stamp out that wanderlust.
And I'll never get the big house again. Because I've been getting used to living in very minimalistic. So I don't need a lot of space and a lot of stuff. Instead, I just want to put whatever I can into more traveling. And even though I'm living in Denmark at that time, I can still go places because I don't think that it totally gets out of my system.
Let's talk about possessions for a minute because I'm really interested in this. To the best of your ability, can you name the things that you own on the road? What do you take with you from town to town?
Well, I have, at some point I was only traveling with a carry-on, size backpack and a suitcase and a computer bag. But now I do have a suitcase where I can put those allowed 20 kilograms in. And it's not a lot. It's the handful of T-shirts and a shirt and pants and then a ton of microphones.
This is the voice of Palle Beau from the Radio Vagabond, as heard here on podcast radio, talking about his journeys around the world for the last 4 years, the equipment that he takes with him. How do you deal with the different power in each country? Do you have a bunch of chargers and adapters as well?
Yeah, I got a few adapters, but it's really not a problem. I remember in the old days, it was like the electricity was different from country to country and you had to be aware of that. But I don't know if that's still the case or the stuff that we plug in there are just ready to go with 220 volts or 110 or whatever, because I never think about it. I just plug in whatever I bring and so that's not an issue. Obviously I need adapters so I can do that, but no, it's never really a problem with the electricity.
What kind of plan do you have with your cell phone provider to be able to be in 200 countries, Palle?
Well, it's, I have a Danish provider. I still have my Danish phone number because I'm from Denmark and I need clients to be able to call me. So I have a Danish phone number and my provider there allows me in many countries to have roaming free. I can't do that here in South Africa. That's not part of the plan. So I got a local SIM card. So when I'm in a place like this, I carry two phones, one with my Danish number and one with the local number that I have when I'm there. So it works out. It's not perfect. And I'm sure that before I stop traveling, there's going to be a plan that just works roaming free all over the world all the time.
There'll be satellites in place. There'll be no place on Earth where you can't get a signal. And I imagine you've run into that quite a bit when you've done shows where you've been crossing the Sahara Desert or something. I bet there are times where you're fairly out of touch with the rest of the world.
Yeah. The biggest issue is when I'm traveling in some countries, the Wi-Fi can be pretty bad, especially when I did my big African tour last time through Western Africa and all the way down here. It's not a place that's optimal for when I have a lot of work to do.
One of the things that's different about the Radio Vagabond from any other podcast that I listen to is that you never stop rolling tape.
I think there's something wrong there with your vehicle.
What? I heard a sound.
When you're just driving down the road by yourself for 500 miles, you've got the tape recorder on just in case something happens and you don't want to miss it. And that has really worked out for you sometimes.
It is, yeah. And that's why I always have my recording gear with me. And like I mentioned, I have this portable handheld Zoom H6, but it is pretty big. It's not just something you put in your pocket of your jeans. So that's why I have the Zoom H1, which is very tiny and decent quality as well. So I carry that all the time. Actually, I just got some new headphones that I haven't used in my podcast yet, but it's headphones with microphones on the ears. So you get to record this 3D audio, binaural audio, where you really sense what's not only left and right, but also in front of you and behind you. And that I'm looking forward to be using in the podcast, because when I'm walking through a street and get to hear subtle language in one side and behind me, and then a car drives by, and it's amazing. So that's my new toy, because when I'm holding a microphone in my hand, people are very aware of something going on. And if I just want to catch the atmosphere, it's more discreet that way.
Certainly, yes. Actually, you lead me into my next question that I've been dying to ask, Palle, since I've been listening to your podcast. You seem to get along so well with the people that you interview. Are there a lot of people you try to talk to that just don't want to have anything to do with you? Do you find it difficult to get the locals to open up to you as a visitor?
No, I find that really, really easy. And actually it's a cool way for me to get experiences that I wouldn't otherwise have, because I have this excuse to talk to people. I just published an episode that I recorded when I was in Durban, here in South Africa, when I did a road trip the last time I was here. And, I got to speak a lot to, a guy who is basically my guide, on this, stadium.
My name is Nkonzo.
Nkonzo?
Nkonzo.
Nkonzo.
Nkonzo means a church gathering.
Okay.
Like a church meeting or prayer meeting.
Is that Zulu?
It's a Zulu name, yes, I'm Zulu.
And he turned out to be a really cool guy, and also a musician and a rapper, and we connected, and we still speak very much to this day. And this afternoon I got a call from a guy that I met in the Gambia when I was there, and we speak from time to time. He was the security guard, and I interviewed him there.
My name is Dauda.
Dauda. In Danish, when we say hi, we say Dau. So Dau.
It's all the same. Yeah.
And we became very close friends. He has a hobby of doing radio as well, so we got this connection as well. So I made so many friends all around the world that I wouldn't have made if it wasn't for the fact that I'm doing this podcast. And for me, that's the real benefit of doing this.
That's why you embarked on this journey in the first place, right? Was because you knew those kind of experiences and memories were out there to be had and made, and you didn't want to miss out on them by just staying in your town.
Exactly. Serendipity. I just love that word.
All right. Let me ask you about some extremes in your travels, Palle Bo. What's the most remote place you've been where you felt the furthest away from civilization?
Oh, now that's a good question.
You been in any jungles?
Yeah, I think that might have been in the Gambia, because I spent New Year's Eve in a place called Mandina River Lodge, that a friend of mine, owns, like this luxury place, but it's in the middle of the jungle. And that's why this guy I told you about before is the security guard. And it was quite empty at the time. I was there with a friend of mine that I was traveling with, and we were just him and me, and then a family. So that was it on New Year's Eve. And obviously, because it was in the jungle, there were no fireworks, there were no nothing. It was just us and a nice dinner, and it was very, very quiet and very different. So I felt very much far away from everything when I was in that jungle there in the Gambia.
Yeah, you're a long way from what you're used to, which is, seeing the fireworks over the Eiffel Tower or something like that with 1 million people.
Exactly. And then a year later, I was standing on Copacabana in Rio with thousands and thousands of people. So that was very much different. But I like both.
What's the sickest you've been on your journey?
It's been really nothing serious. I had the flu at some point.
You're drinking water all over the world and you're not getting sick?
Yeah. And I think it's because my immune system gets stronger, because I get exposed to so many germs around the world. So I think it helps me that I expose myself. No, I don't get sick. It's very, very rare. I did have, when I was doing the West African tour, I did have pneumonia and had to go to the hospital to get antibiotics. I was in the Sahara Desert when I felt sick, and the local people that I was living with, there was they said, "Oh, just go to the pharmacy. There's not a doctor in this village, but just go to the pharmacy. He'll give you some antibiotics." And then I spoke to my then retired doctor back in Denmark and said, "Should I just get some antibiotic?" And he said, "No, get to a hospital real quick." And so I had to track back to a place called Tishnit that had a hospital, and there I made friends with the local butcher, and we spoke, and he was on my podcast, so we became good friends, and he's also one of the people that I speak to all the time, Omar. So he helped me go to the hospital and translate for me, and got a prescription for some antibiotics, and that helped me. And I also got an X-ray that I took a photo of and sent to my doctor back in Denmark, like just with my iPhone. And he said, "I don't like the look of that. Have a checkup in a couple of months." So I got really worried that there was something he wasn't telling me why. He didn't really want to tell me, but yeah, I turned out to be fine. I got a checkup when I came to Cape Town, and everything was fine. But that's the sickest I've been, I think.
You mentioned having a translator in that instance in the emergency room. You speak English and you speak. Okay. Pardon the interruption. I hate to jump in here, but if you'll forgive the analogy, I'm about to drive this interview car right off a cliff. Look, I embarrassed myself thousands of times on the radio back in America, but get set for the dumbest thing I've said since I've been on British radio. Let's back it up and see if you can spot where this is going. You speak English and you speak, please don't say it, please don't say it, please don't say it. You even stopped and thought about it before you said it. You speak English and you speak Dutch?
No, Danish.
Sorry.
Not Dutch. That is so American to say that.
So American. And I paused and I thought, oh, I've got it right. Of course I didn't.
Yeah. And I tell you, there's so many Americans that say, oh, you're from Denmark, so you speak Dutch. And I say, no, but it's close. No, it's far away. It's very different. But the Scandinavian languages, we understand each other. Denmark, Norway and Sweden, we sort of understand each other most of the time. And, yeah.
But you're still
a little bit of German as well.
And a little bit of Spanish, I know from the podcast in South America as well. But you're kind of, when you're in Asia or in Africa, how useful is English? Is that something you still run across?
Yeah, most of the time. When I was doing the West African tour, it was mostly French there, and even though I had French back in school in the old days, it's very, very rusty. But something came back, and when they don't speak anything else, you
just wave your arms around and talk louder, then they'll understand you.
Yeah, most of that, yeah.
All right, next one. Have you ever been fearful of being mugged or robbed or kidnapped or, God forbid, something worse on your travels?
No, I haven't. And I've been scammed a number of times, where people just scam me. So that's happened, and I'm getting better at smelling the scams, but I hate when that happens. I really hate when I get scammed. I get so angry at myself, but I've never been robbed. I've never been in any real danger. There's really nothing that's happened to me. And sometimes I get it when I meet other bloggers and podcasters that are doing travel content, and they have this great story. I kind of get a little bit jealous and say, oh, why wasn't I in that shipwreck? But then when I hear the story, I say, no, I'm pretty good that I'm not. Yeah.
I bet there are a lot of people who are nervous to travel to most places in the world because they're afraid they'll be away from 21st century amenities in their mind, or they'll have problems communicating. I mean, you've kind of blown all of that up, that the travel is fairly easy and fairly safe no matter where you go so far, at least at this point in your journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really not that dangerous a place out there. And I use my common sense and I use my smile. So that is the two weapons I carry. I don't do anything stupid. I don't walk down a dark alley in the middle of the night. And if people tell me that it's not safe to go out, I will not. And if I do, I will walk in a crowd. And I got some good advice from a guy here in Cape Town. He said, you should be orange. You shouldn't be green where you're just too careless, and you shouldn't be red. You shouldn't look like a victim. You should be orange. You should be alert and sensible. Use your common sense. And I think that's one of the reasons that, knock on wood, nothing's happened to me on my journey. But I did know that when I went on my journey, I did know that, yeah, it might be something that will get me hurt, but I was in a car accident when I lived in Denmark, like not even a mile away from where I live. And I totaled my car and nearly killed a guy with this accident. So things can happen when you're just around the corner from where you are. And it doesn't need to be more dangerous out there. So, yeah.
All right. I can't believe I'm going to ask this question, but I have to. Any romance on your travels, Polybo?
It's hard when you travel, and it's hard when I'm leaving soon. So a little bit. Next question.
By the way, the leaving soon part would encourage some of us to go for romance, just so you know.
Oh, it does. Okay. I'll make a note of that.
All right. Last question in this thread, and that is, do you recall a day that you might point to as your happiest day of the last 4 years while traveling around the world?
Every single day. If I can't really think of anything that is, no, I've enjoyed everything. And there are no points where I say that was the top. It's all downhill from here. No, it's been great, and I enjoy everything. And now I just can't wait to go to the next place. Before the lockdown, where I got stranded here in Cape Town, for 3.5 years, I packed and unpacked 314 different places. So. That's an average of 4.5 days in each place, and every single place has given me something in terms of memories and good experiences, and it's not really been anything that I can think of that's been the absolute highlight.
The good news for fans of the Radio Vagabond podcast is you have so many episodes from cities you've already been to that are banked, that are just waiting to be cut up and released, right?
Oh, yeah. I am so way behind. And I spoke to a friend of mine. He said, how long time can you keep putting out episodes before you need to record some new stuff, like 30 episodes? And I said, no, I got at least 200 just waiting to get put out. So, yeah. I have so much coming up, and I can stop traveling totally and still put out episodes for a couple of years. So
that's amazing.
I'd like to be more up to date. I would love that I was putting out episodes that I recorded a few weeks ago, but that's just not the case. And I spend maybe 2, 3, 4 full working days just editing one episode. So it takes a lot of time.
Oh, it shows. I mean, your hard work definitely shows. Just 2 more questions, Polly, and you're very kind to spend all this time for me today. Number 1 is I'd be remiss if I didn't ask what your memories are of your travels to England.
You know what? I've been to London more times than I can even remember, to be honest, because it's so close to Denmark, and
sure,
we have Ryanair going back and forth. It was cheaper for me to fly to London than to go to Copenhagen from where I lived on a domestic flight in Denmark. So I've been to London so many times, and I wanted to see more. I was in Bristol like 35 years ago, but I wanted to see more. So last year I got a house sit in Hepton Bridge, which is between Manchester and Leeds, and in the mountains at a beautiful place. I think actually that's where Ed Sheeran comes from. A small place, very artistic, and it's so beautiful, and I just loved it there. And from there, obviously, I went to Manchester, I went to Leeds, and I went in the area, and then I took a road trip up to Scotland, all the way to Loch Ness, and another way down, and then ended up in London. So that was a couple of months in England, and and in the UK, and I so want to do so much more. I've been to Dublin, but only Dublin. I want to see more of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and I want to go to Wales, and I so want to see more of the northern part of England as well, and the southern part. I haven't been there. So yeah, I got a lot to see in the UK, and I really want to go that and put that high on my list.
All right, last question for you, Palebo, and that is, you've had the benefit of more time alone than most of us have. A lot of time out on the road, being able to be introspective about yourself. Have you learned anything about yourself that surprised you or that you didn't know? Have you achieved some clarity from all of this time where you've been able to just be thinky out there by yourself?
I don't know if I've learned something about myself. I've learned that I'm okay with being in my own company, but also I'm also very social. I'm an extrovert. I'm not an introvert, but I can be with my own company, and that just get me focused on the work that I do on the road. But I also go out and meet people. And actually, when we've done recording, I'm going next door to a friend I made here in Hout Bay, Cape Town, that we're going to have an afternoon beer in a few minutes. But what it really have showed me is that time is moving slower when I do this, because I have to take in so much new every day. So those 4 years I've been traveling full time, for me, it feels like 20 years. I met an old friend of mine who lives back in Denmark, and he said, "Have you been traveling for a year?" And at that time, I've been traveling 3.5 years. And I said, no. And for him, it felt like a year, but for me, it feels like 20. So I think that's the interesting part, that I get. I trick my brain into believing that I'm 150 years old.
That is so interesting.
If that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. The perception of time. And you had that conversation with your friend back in Denmark in Dutch, right?
In Dutch. Yeah, exactly.
The Radio Vagabond is the podcast. There are many, many episodes available. Go to the website, go to the feed, continue to listen to them here on Podcast Radio. It really is one of the crown jewels of our podcast scheduled lineup, Polly. And I can't tell you how excited I am that I got a chance to talk to you. I'm so used to hearing your voice in my headphones, but now to actually hear it live in real time, this has been a real thrill, and I thank you so much for your time.
Well, it's been absolutely an honor to be interviewed by a Hall of Famer. So I'm so proud that you to be on your show.
Well, if you've still got all those radio stations, this Hall of Famer is underemployed. I could use some work, Polly.
In the show notes, I've added a link to where you can listen to Podcast Radio. I'll be back later this week with more flashback episodes. In this week, you can join me in Japan, Nicaragua, and New Orleans. My name is Palebo. See ya.